languishing is a dullness or dwindling of your energy. So you become indifferent to your indifference. Really, it's that in-between stage where you're not necessarily depressed or burned out because you don't have the classic symptoms of those, but you're also not on the other side where you're not flourishing and you have a sense of well-being and productivity in your life, and you're not reaching the full capacity that you should be at. It really, in essence, is you're living in a fog. How are we going to move forward? Okay, we have now 2 years of this pandemic, and we've developed a new lifestyle or a new approach to this, and we have adopted the languishing feeling of just sitting there, not moving forward, but not falling back. We're just kind of there.
Yes, Beth, I agree. So many of us have been really stuck there during the pandemic, and it's tough to move through it. If we don't address it, then that state of meh or blah could develop into a clinical depression or anxiety disorder. Psychologist Martin Seligman put forth a theory of well-being that has an acronym that relates to the 5 pillars of well-being called PERMA. And this theory can really be applied to this process of moving from languishing to flourishing. The first part, P, stands for positive emotion. So researchers have long connected feeling positive emotion to a person's sense of well-being. And there's actually a ratio that was identified by researchers that is considered an ideal ratio or the tipping point for well-being, and that is that we should experience at least 3 times as many positive emotions as we experience negative ones. And so positive emotions are like gratitude, joy, hope, optimism, happiness. And it was really difficult for us to do that during the pandemic because we were stuck in a lot of negative emotions like uncertainty and fear. So how do we turn that around? How do we get out of that? And it can be a difficult thing to do because we've trained our minds to really be more in those negative emotions. And so we have to be consciously aware of our self-talk. We have to reframe our negative thinking into positive thinking to generate positive emotion. And some ways we can do that are like through affirmations, putting Post-it notes on the bathroom mirror with positive sayings.
Yeah, those positive things, there's so much negativity going on right now in the world that you have to be conscious, aware to be positive.
So mindfulness is a wonderful practice where you focus on present-centered awareness and you stay out of the rumination and anxiety that the future can bring. So the next part is engagement. And engagement can relate to that sense of flow. When we're fully engaged in something, we can lose a sense of self and time. And we can be engaged in all kinds of activities, but we can't maintain a state of engagement unless we're challenging ourselves. It's hard to do that. We may need to establish a schedule. That's one thing that I found to be helpful is I made myself a schedule of when I should be getting out there and doing things. And it was good. It helped reorient me and get me back on track.
Even engaging like writing or a project around the house or dreaming and planning, like you were saying, planning a schedule, planning out maybe going on vacation or, what are you going to do next or things like that are productive engagement instead of sitting there on the couch binging the next episode of the TV series for the next hour. Is that productive? And so I agree with you that engagement pieces need to be productive and have a sense of accomplishment.
Yes, and that brings us to the R in PERMA theory, relationships. So spending time around positive people is important to our well-being. Relationships are so important because they buffer us against the stresses of life and disappointments, and not having relationships can lead to loneliness and depression and really have a tremendous negative impact on our well-being. And what happened during the pandemic through social distancing is we lost contact with a lot of our relationships. Another thing about relationships is that we get a lot of positive energy from being around others. And we also we feel good when we help other people. So engaging in acts of kindness and doing service for others, it really does promote our sense of well-being.
So being intentional and building those relationships, especially being around people who are positive. I mean, there's always going to be difficult people in your life, and you have to learn to navigate that. But those positive people there are also there too, and re-engaging with that and serving that bigger purpose.
During the pandemic, a lot of us took time to slow down and pause. It was this huge collective pause, really. And we had the time to really examine what gives our life meaning. So meaning, it refers to our awareness of our purpose in life. So during this time, we reevaluated our priorities, and we realized we really liked spending time with our family and pets, and we liked having work-life balance, and we don't want to give those things up. So I think a lot of people are struggling with staying stuck right now because they like what they got, the positive things that came out of the experience of the pandemic. And so they're not wanting to move away from those. So as we move out of the pandemic and we move toward flourishing, it's important that we maybe take time to incorporate the good things, keep those things, keep the meal times with family, keep the boundaries around work, and establish better work-life balance.
Yeah, I agree. It's the gratitude, the finding meaning and appreciation, those deeper appreciations for things.
And A stands for accomplishment. And accomplishment is often defined as achievement. And it isn't directly related to well-being, it's indirectly related. And the way that it's indirectly related has to do with defining and setting goals, which lead to skills mastery, which then translates to self-efficacy. So that is really where accomplishment relates to well-being. It's through self-efficacy. And what happened in the pandemic is we stopped working toward goals. We were trying to survive. We were stuck in survival mode and just treading water, doing the very best that we could with very difficult circumstances. And so as we're moving out of that, it's important to maybe take a new look at those goals, because for many of us, those goals changed. I think we need to give ourselves permission to take things slow. And that's okay. And it's okay to have compassion for yourself if you don't meet those goals. It's okay. It's all right. And it's okay to redefine them, to make them smaller if you have to take those baby steps.
And it's not achieved overnight, and you have to work for it. It's like exercise or working on a puzzle or a challenge. You got to continually strive for it. But if you do, you're going to start flourishing, feeling, and start moving forward into a thriving state.